Well, thank you, Karen. Thank you all for being here this morning and for your willingness to go out there and fight. You know, this is such an important election. Remember 4 years ago, everybody was saying that that was the most important election? Well, it was, because there have been people who've been trying to fundamentally change this country for many, many decades. Go back to the Fabians, and then the communists, the socialists, the liberals. Now they call themselves progressives. They're the same people, and they just keep changing their name. Okay, they have a different ideal. You know, this election is not about Republicans and Democrats. It's much bigger than that. In the past, it really didn't matter that much who won, whether they're Republicans or Democrats. Things kind of continued on the same. Now we're talking about something very different. We're talking about people who believe that this country is for of and by the people, and another group who believes it's for of and by the government. Those two things lead to very different places. So we're talking about the future of our country. Now, in order to make that fundamental change in our society, there are three things that they must control. The school system, because you want to indoctrinate the young people. They've been doing that for the last couple of decades. You're starting to see some of those young people come of age now, and that's why you're seeing some of the stuff you see in Seattle and places like that. You have to also control the media so that you can filter what the people get. And you can see that going on, for instance, with the Hunter Biden computer. And then you have to control the courts. Now, in 2016, they had two of the three. They had the educational system and the media, and they were absolutely certain they were going to win, so they were going to get the courts, and Hillary is going to get 3 Supreme Court picks and be able to fill in all those federal judges. There was only one problem: Donald J. Trump. That's why they hate him so much. I mean, every time they see him, it reminds them that, you know, they didn't get what they've been trying to do for decades. And now they can't get it for another generation unless they can pack the courts, unless they can do something. So that's why this now becomes the most important election, because we're talking about the future of our country. You know, I find it fascinating that you have these groups like the Lincoln Project who say that they're Republicans, but they're going to vote the other way because they're offended, you know, by the president's tone and by his tweeting and all these things. Let me tell you something. What it really comes down to is, what is more important, your feelings or the opportunities your grandchildren will have in the future? That's the message that needs to be got. If you know anybody who belongs in that setting, you just make sure that they understand that if they're voting against this president and this party because they don't like the messenger, then they are missing the big picture altogether. We are talking about what is going to happen in the future of our country. You know, it's interesting that Nikita Khrushchev, some of you may remember that name from a few decades ago, he said of the United States, your grandchildren's children will live under communism, and we won't have to fire a shot. Now, what did he know? He knew what was necessary to change a free society like ours to what they consider a utopian society of communism. First thing you have to do is you have to gain control of the thing that is most valuable that a person has. And what is that? Their health. So Vladimir Lenin said, the linchpin to the change is socialized medicine. Do you see anybody pushing that? Yeah, absolutely. That's the direction they're going. And then you have to increase poverty. Why do you have to increase poverty? Because you want people to be dependent on the government. So hence all these welfare programs, and the way the welfare programs are structured in such a way that people are complacent to remain in a dependent situation. And then you raise the debt to unimaginable levels so that you can justify high taxes, which transfers the money from the people to the government, making the government much more powerful. You can see all of these things in progress. Then you gain control of the educational system, gain control of the media, and you remove from the people their ability to protect themselves from an overly aggressive government. Second Amendment. Now you hear them already starting the argument. You don't need a high-powered rifle to go duck hunting. You don't need an AK-47 to go deer hunting. Newsflash. The Second Amendment is not about duck hunting and deer hunting. It is about the people's ability to defend themselves from a tyrannical government. And these are things that we must understand. And then the final thing that you must do is you must remove God. You don't want people dependent on God, you want people dependent on the government. You see all of those things in progress right now. The only thing that can stop it is us. We the people. We have to be smart enough to understand what's going on. Now, I personally believe that the American people are too smart to fall for it. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't make sure that that's the case. We need to make sure we disseminate the appropriate information so that they understand what's going on. The media has a concerted effort to keep this information away from the people and to make sure that they don't know the truth. They have an echo chamber. They get only the things they want you to hear, and they spread it amongst themselves, and they all say the same thing over and over again until people begin to believe that that's true. There's also a great tendency for them to want to divide our people. Divide and conquer. Have you seen all of this stuff about racism lately? I mean, just everything boils back down to racism and dividing people. And don't you get a chuckle out of the way? Everything the president does makes him a racist. Is this so crazy? You know, when he was in New York, he got a special award from Jesse Jackson because of all the economic opportunities he presented for black people. And when he moved to Palm Beach, he was on the forefront of integrating the social clubs and the golf clubs, which were excluding Jews and blacks. And then as president, you know, criminal justice reform, the First Step Act, HBCU, opportunity zones, school choice. I mean, look at all this stuff. If he's a racist, he's the worst one ever, you know? And, but you know, it's all an attempt to divide people, to make black people feel like they're victims, that somebody has created this problem for them, to make white people feel guilty. And I'll tell you something, that is a horrible combination. Black victimhood and white guilt. It leads to ridiculous policies like abolish the police or defund the police, just crazy stuff that makes absolutely no sense at all. And what we have to do is start using those tremendous brains that God gave us. You know, a large part of my life dealt with the brain. And I can tell you, I would have patients from China, from Russia, from Africa, from South America. And you know what? When I cut the skin and peeled it back and took off that skull, I was operating on the thing that made that person who they are. Their skin doesn't make them who they are. Their hair doesn't make them who they are. Their brain makes them who they are. That's what we need to start concentrating on. And, when I was a youngster, I had plenty of people around me who were talking about victimhood all the time. You can't do this, and the system is against you. You'll never be successful. But, I had perhaps the best thing a person can have. A mother who didn't buy into all that stuff. If anybody was a victim, it was my mother. She was born to a huge family in rural Tennessee, dire poverty, got married at age 13 trying to escape. She and my father moved to Detroit. Years later, she discovered he was a bigamist. Of course, that resulted in a divorce. And she had less than a third grade education, trying to raise 2 sons by herself. Can you imagine that? But she refused to be a victim. And she was a domestic. At least that was her cover. Cleaning other people's house. What she really was a spy. Because she said, I'm going to see what these people are doing whose houses I clean. Why are they so successful? And she discovered that they did a lot of reading and didn't sit around watching TV all day, and she came home and imposed that on us. And we were not happy campers, let me tell you. In fact, in today's world, we would have called social services. They would have come and gotten it. But, we had to read those books, and, in the course of a year and a half, I went from the bottom of the class to the top of the class. Much to the consternation of all the students, used to laugh and call me dummy. They were now coming to me saying, Benny, how do you work this problem? I'd say, sit at my feet, youngster, while I instruct you. I was perhaps a little obnoxious, but it sure felt good to say that to those turkeys. But at any rate, as I read about scientists and explorers and surgeons and entrepreneurs, I began to realize something very important. And that is that the person who has the most to do with what happens to you is you. It's not somebody else. You're the one who controls your destiny. This is something that we used to teach and emphasize in America before the victim mentality began to take root. And it's something we need to begin to emphasize again. The opportunities are here in this country. If this was the horrible, racist, unfair place that people say it is, would people be forming caravans trying to get in here? I don't think so. This is still the dream destination for millions of people around the world because they realize opportunity exists here. And have you ever noticed how when a lot of immigrants come here, they do extremely well? Why? Because they look around, they say, what? You mean all I got to do is work hard and study? Whereas a lot of Americans say, I don't have any opportunities. There's no opportunities. There's always opportunities. You make opportunities. You prepare yourself, and everything you need is right there. And this is something that the president realizes, and he realizes that you have to create the right environment. And hence the removal of so many unnecessary regulations and restructuring the taxes so that you could keep more of the money that you earn rather than redistributing it to the government. Those are the kinds of things that created such a strong economy that it's been able to withstand 6 to 7 months of shutdown, to the chagrin of a whole bunch of people who thought everything was going to collapse and they could blame it on the president. It's not happening. And it is poised now for a tremendous rebound. And, as far as the coronavirus is concerned, if you look at certain cable networks, you would think that we were all going to die. And if you get it, you're dead. What a bunch of crap. The fact of the matter is, you'll notice that the death rate, the percentage of death, is going down considerably. We're learning a lot about it. And, the president says, it's about to disappear. Eventually, it will. but we're going to help it along considerably. You're going to see that there be a number of things that happen after the election that are sort of being held back right now. I have something myself that I keep and take, so I'm not even worried about getting it, quite frankly. But all of this will happen, and this too will pass. That's what people need to remember. We don't need to be changing everything to accommodate something that is going to go away. Now, there are things that will change permanently. There'll be a lot more teleworking, distal education, things like that. After every major pandemic, there are huge societal changes, and there will be this time too, but they don't have to be bad. They can be good things. You think about if you have a whole bunch of people teleworking, then there won't be so many people on the road. So, there are all kind of good things that can come out of this as well. But let us remember who we are as a nation. America is more than just a place. America is an idea. It's an idea about freedom, about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness as rights given to us not by the government but by our Creator. And we need to recognize that godly principles are at the foundation of this nation. Loving your neighbor, caring about those who are disadvantaged, developing your God-given talents to the utmost so that you become valuable to the people around you, having values and principles that govern your life. Those are the things that made America into a great nation. Those are the things that will keep us a great nation. And we can never become discouraged and yield to the division and the hatred, the cancel culture, the political correctness, the things that are antithetical to the founding principles of our nation. And I want you to think back to the War of 1812. And the British were about to bombard Fort McHenry in Chesapeake Bay. And they said to General Armistead, who was in charge, "Take down that American flag and we won't destroy you." And General Armistead did not take that flag down. And they began the bombardment, overwhelming forces, all night long, bombs bursting in air, rockets. But you know what? When the dawn light came, our flag was still there. Our people stood up. Our soldiers stood up. They held that flag up. They would not let that flag go down. And you think about World War II on D-Day. All of those young American soldiers getting off Normandy Beach, being mowed down by machine gun fire. Hundreds dying, laying there in the sand, 1,000 bodies. But they kept coming, stepping over those bodies to overwhelm the Axis power, knowing in many cases that they would never see their homeland again. They would never see their loved ones again. Why did they do it? Not for themselves, but they did it for us. They did it so that we could enjoy the freedoms of what is America. And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is time for us to stand up for what we believe in, for those who are coming after us. And the next time you sing the Star Spangled Banner and you get to the end of that first stanza and it says, "The land of the free and the home of the brave," don't just let those words roll off your tongue. But remember, we cannot be free if we're not brave. Thank you.